And this last point I want to touch on is, why do you think that now confusing pleasure for happiness is something that's very common in our society?
I believe that I'll tell you what my view about that is. So first of all, I don't think this is the root cause of it, but I'll mention it in passing that in the English language, maybe other languages as well, but certainly the English language, the word, and many people are just unaware of this, the word happiness is an interesting word. Like, if I ask a bunch of people what makes them happy, they'll say watching Netflix, eating chocolate, and drinking a nice glass of wine or something like that, right? Things like that, right? But the word happiness used to mean something different not that long ago. And there's evidence of that in our language. If you look in the dictionary now, occasionally people will use the word hapless, which means wretched and unfortunate. And hapless means the opposite of what the word happy used to mean. Happy used to mean fortunate and flourishing and doing well, right? But it became degraded over time so that it simply referred to a kind of superficial, subjective feeling. Feeling happy is not the same as actually flourishing, right? So somebody might be high as a kite on some narcotic and feeling happy in this superficial sense, but we might describe them as being hapless, like wretched and unfortunate. Yeah. So, and not in the original, not in the meaning of the word happy that we use when we talk about Greek philosophy refers to actual flourishing. For the Greeks, to say someone had eudaimonia, to say they were eudaimon, or the word that's traditionally translated as happy, would mean that you would look at them and think, I want to be that guy. Like, I really admire him. Not just that he's got a big smile on his face, because somebody, might be an idiot and they might be high as a kite and have a big smile. They might not be flourishing at all. They might be quite wretched and hapless but experiencing hedonia or pleasure. So we've confused these things so much that the very word happiness has become degraded in the English language. It's interesting how far we've wandered, like, from meaningful conversations that in the past people used to be able to have. We don't even have the language anymore to easily discuss the most important things in life. Socrates would look at us and think, you guys, I told you, discuss the most important things in life. You've gone so far off the track now. You've even forgotten what some of the words mean that we used to use to have these conversations. How weird is that, right? So now, I'll tell you what I think. I'm not sure about this, but this is my feeling about it. I think when you're born, you thrown into the world, and you gradually develop language and self-awareness as you're growing up as a small child. And unfortunately, it's kind of the process is back to front. So you begin looking around you as a child and emulating what you see other people doing. So small children will look at, if there's a loud bang, what does a 2-year-old do? They immediately look at their parents' reaction, like, to see, if they're freaking out or not. And then they'll copy it. If their parents freak out, then the child will start busting into tears as well, like, because it looks for cues from the adults around them and it copies them, right? So that our initial phase, like, there's a lot of emulation. The children are just modeling what's going on around them. And before we can even talk, right? So we are modeling external behavior, what we see people doing on the outside, right? And that shapes our personalities and our underlying values. And by the time we develop language and reason and self-awareness, it's too late, right? We're already on this path of looking around us and getting our values and our direction in life from what we see other people doing. Now, unfortunately, what people do, what we see them doing every day, is quite different from what they claim is the most important thing in life. So everybody will say, well, what really matters is being true to your values and all that kind of good stuff. And then you watch what people are doing and how they're behaving. And a lot of what you see is them avoiding discomfort, like chasing superficial pleasures, protecting their ego, like all that superficial stuff. And then we act with it. Why are people so superficial? Like, because when you look around, that's what you see all around you. Everyone's running it. Like, everyone seems to be trying to get money, like, and impress other people. Like, and so as children, that's all we see. Like, and then we get language and reason, and we start to reflect and question and think, and we go, maybe money doesn't really make you happy. But now it's too late, right? Because we're enmeshed in a system of values where, we've grown up like surrounded by people that seem to be accumulating material possessions as if it's like, as if it's the most important thing in the world. So I think it has to do in part with the fact that we begin developing through nonverbal learning and observation of people's external behavior. And, it may be that when we question people about why they're trying to accumulate money, for example, that they would say, well, I'm doing it to protect my family or something like that. There's some other motive for doing it that maybe is a little bit more profound, but we don't necessarily see that on the outside. So we're bound to acquire superficial values when we model people's external behavior without questioning them more deeply about their underlying goals and motives. But, it takes maturity and time before we get an opportunity to do that. So I, for that reason, I don't think it's surprising that throughout history, people end up being hedonistic and egotistical and falling into the same trap generation after generation. I think it's just the way that human life is and the way that our brains and bodies are designed leaves us vulnerable to making these errors.